It may have been freezing outside, but the Raptors stayed red hot on the court thanks to some very elite defense. Let's talk about it.
This is the Raptors Postcast, your instant game reaction for the Toronto Raptors. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this episode of the Raptors Postcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the #1 podcast network covering your team every day. And we're coming to you live after the Raptors 103-101 win against Oklahoma City Thunder on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Locked On Podcast feed. I'm Zulfi, Sheikh, credential journalist covering the Raptors and the NBA for over 2 years with outlets like Sportsnet and Raptors Republic. And now I'm one of your humble hosts on the Raptors Postcast, breaking down each and every game with you. And with me is Duane Notice, a.k.a. Dino, professional basketball player and analyst. Duane has represented Canada. He's been part of the Raptors system with the 905, and he's still hooping professionally in leagues like the CEBL. And now on tonight's show, we're going to talk about a very special effort by the Raptors to beat the champs. We're going to break down a second quarter that was indicative of what was to come later on in the game, get some thoughts from our resident pro with the segment we like to call Take Notice, and then we'll wrap things up by handing out our player of the game. And Duane, I don't even know where to start here. There are so many threads to pull on with this game. But obviously, I think we can go to the fourth quarter where the Raptors were able to pull things out. And I think specifically defensively, they were really special in the fourth quarter. They held the Thunder to 20 points in the fourth quarter. They held them to 101 points for the game, which is tied for their second fewest points in a game this season. And that was because there was a heave at the end by, I think, Aaron Wiggins. If he didn't make that, they would have held the Thunder to under 100 points, which again has only happened once this season. We can break it down further, but just to start, what did you see from the Raptors to close out this game?
Attention to detail. I think they did a great job of sending two to Sheikh. SGA only being held at 24 points sounds like a crazy thing because for other players, that might be an elite game. But for Sheikh, that's actually a step down. So credit to Jacoby Walter and other guys like Shed and everybody else for providing that extra effort on the defensive end. But I think it had to do with the attention to detail. Like I said, sending two to Sheikh not only forces the Raptors to be in scramble situations, but now because they're rotating at a high level, they're able to get these contests onto these shooters and force other guys to be the guy tonight outside of SGA. And I think the Raptors did a great job of closing quarters, but also closing the game because they were able to make that second effort. We teach the flyby thing now as a modern concept thing on defense for a shooter where you want to fly by. But how many times did we see that second effort with the rear view contest, whether it was Grady Dick, who did a great job of doing that, or anybody else who contested these shooters at a high level? And I think that really contributes to the OKC Thunder missing in the fourth quarter when it mattered the most for the Raptors.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head that they had people active on defense all over the place. You know, against a guy like SGA, it has to be a team effort. No one's going to be able to stop him one-on-one. And even a guy like Jacoby Walter, who is basically his primary matchup for a lot of this game, which is saying a lot for Jacoby not only being a second-year guy, but this was his first game coming back from injury. He had missed 7 games in a row. So that's 2 weeks off. You come back and coach says, hey, you have to go guard the league MVP. And he, quite frankly, did a pretty fantastic job for the most part. You can look at Sheikh, like you said, 24 points for him is not that great, but decent efficiency, 8 of 11 from the field. So you think he's having a good enough night. But for Sheikh, you know the Thunder need more than that, especially on a night like tonight where they were shorthanded. No J-Dub, no Caruso, no Isaiah Hartenstein, and they're missing their backup point guard in AJ Mitchell as well. But this is still a top 5 defense and offense. I'm not trying to squash anything from this Raptors win, but for them to be able to do what they did on the defensive end, Jacoby was doing what he did. Scottie Barnes late in this game, closing out. He had that block on Chet Holmgren on that step back where he literally just rejected him completely. He gets the ball, goes up the floor, and then he has some clutch rebounds as well. Like, I keep saying it, but I'm going to say it again. Scottie Barnes, Defensive Player of the Year. Put him on the ballot. He needs to be there.
Yeah, he needs to be there. And like I said, he definitely should be the winner. He's guarding 1 through 5. That last play was tremendous because not only was he able to close that at a high level, but he blocked the shot, the apex of it, and then made a great play, able to call a timeout and secure that possession for the Raptors. That was very much needed. But the reason why that play even was effective was because a guy like Jacoby White was face guarding SGA, doing a great job of preventing him from getting the rock in the first place. And we know SGA rises to those clutch moments. So having him not have the ball in his hands as much in the fourth quarter did a great job for the Raptors and their success on the defensive end. But also, SGA looked like he was a little disengaged, specifically in the first half. He wasn't really getting to his spot. He was very passive, and that demeanor is not something we're accustomed to seeing from one of the best players and the former MVP of the NBA. But in the third quarter, he started cooking a little bit, And again, credit to the Raptors for figuring it out and staying diligent with the game plan and staying in front of SGA and making it hard for his teammates to have to be the star for the night.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned in the third quarter, SGA had 12 points. He was 5 of 5 from the field. He did not miss in that quarter. And a part of it was that the Raptors had to give Jacoby a rest. You had them go double point guard because you want to get a bit of IQ off ball. But what that means is you have a guy like Jamal Shed on SGA, and his length isn't necessarily the same as Jacoby Walter, not necessarily as physical. So Sheikh can shoot over a guy like Jamal Shed, and you saw him get going a bit. And if the Raptors lost this game, I think for me, that would have been a major turning point, because when you let a superstar feel that rhythm and get comfortable, then you have to change everything you're doing defensively. They were already trying to play deny ball defense on SGA as much as possible, but then when he's able to make you pay for that by making those tough shots, you have to maybe send another guy. You have to switch up what you're doing, and then it like cascades on everything else going on. So for the Raptors to weather that storm and continue their defensive process in the fourth quarter, again, they held OKC to 20 points in the second and 20 points in the fourth. That just does not happen often to this team. This was only the the first time since like 2023 that they've lost back-to-back home games. So the Raptors did something many teams just don't get to do against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I think for them, it was just a massive statement that leaned on their strength, because the Raptors, we know, are not a great offense necessarily. They're, I think, middle of the pack. Their defense is their strength. OKC is great on both sides of the floor. So I didn't think the Raptors were going to be able to win this game by having the craziest offensive night. They were going to have to rely on their defense being able to neutralize OKC's offense a little bit. And that's exactly what they were able to accomplish because of all the guys on the roster.
Yeah, and on top of that, what we like to say in the game of basketball is that it's not a defensive stop until you secure that rebound. And for the Raptors, they were incredible on the boards, 51 to 37, so plus 14 in that department. So again, not only were they flying around and doing great jobs of having a shot contest, but they were also making sure they got that stop by clearing it up with a rebound. So the Raptors did a great job. They were in tune. It seemed like they had that togetherness and that sense of connectivity on the defensive end that we haven't really seen in these long spurts, but it was awesome to see. You mentioned that 2-guard front, and yeah, there are some cons to that with the size differential between a guy like Shed, playing against a guy like SGA, who's a little taller and loves and thrives and playing in that mid-post area. But at the same time, I love that look at the end of the game because it allowed for them to make smarter decisions. You have 2 point guards out there in Quickley and in Shed, so it allows you to kind of slow the possession down when it needed to be slowed down and take those great shots. And we had a guy like Shed who got into the teeth of the defense, kicked it out. We saw the ball get swung. Brandon Ingram drove against the second closeout, kicked it out for a Quickley shot, who hit it against the right three by the Raptors bench, and that was a clutch shot. And then what happened the next play after that? We see a guy like Shed getting into the teeth of the defense, drive, kick, swing, nice kick out to Quickley, recognizing that he has a hot hand, and he made him pay back-to-back threes. And I think that was very crucial and vital for the end of the game for the Raptors, but it all started from the defensive end. And a guy like Shed, who, like you said, is not able to kind of, Shea got cooking because he shot over him, but at the same time, his energy was very impactful, and he made up for it in the fourth quarter with all those great decision-making.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair and valid point. Again, Shed closing this game. I think that's also a credit to Darko a little bit. He was willing to close smaller against this OKC team. It was Shed, it was Jacoby Walter, IQ was out there at the same time. So you have 3 guards against an Oklahoma City Thunder team, again, that has a Jalen Williams, a Chet Holmgren, guys with a bit more size and length that you can feel can punish the Raptors. But tonight, Raptors activity on the glass was able to keep them in it. I felt like they were gang rebounding really well for the most part as well, doing it together. But it allowed them, like you said, for a guy like Shed to get those driving kicks late. Shed was able to also find Scottie Barnes for a really big dunk towards that closing time in the fourth quarter as well. So allowing him to orchestrate. And then I think you already kind of made this point, but you get more IQ off ball, and there's so much value in that with Immanuel Quickley shooting gravity. And when you're not following up with him at the 3-point line, he's in such a flow right now that he's making the other team pay consistently. You mentioned it, back-to-back threes. He was 6 of 10 from the 3-point line in this game. I think he entered the night having made like 11 of his last 16 threes. So this road trip has been fantastic for Immanuel Quickley specifically. And so then to get him to off the ball a little bit, playing to more of his, I would say, his more natural style than being an on-ball guard, I think that's what Chet allows you to do. And for you to get those looks in a closing situation, the highest pressure moments against, again, a really, really good OKC Thunder team, that is a testament to what Darko and this coaching staff has been developing with these guys all season.
Yeah, what have we been harping on for the rest of the podcast is to keep it as simple. A couple possessions prior to that, those two back-to-back threes, Quickly actually missed a three at the top. It was a late shot clock situation, but it was off the dribbles of, I mean, not a three, sorry. It was a mid-range near the
Right.
Raptors bench. Tough shot. He had a grenade. He had to take it, but that was a very crucial possession. He missed that shot. You come down, you have a more spot-up opportunity, and I think that's a more rhythm three for him. Like you said, playing to his strengths where he's natural at, and that's him being off the ball. I like him playing off the ball because right now he seems like he's not only assertive, but he's also decisive, right? And before that was kind of the issue with his offense is that he's holding the ball a little bit too much. But under this Darko offense at the 0.5 style of basketball, we see him make quick decisions. And when he's making quick decisions, that's when he's most effective. Whether it's that floater we saw in the first half that was beautiful, he's floating that thing up there, tear drops to the God, or whether it's him making tray balls or getting into the lane and using his his pivots, right? The up fakes. We see him do that for the last couple games on the road now, but it's so great when he gets into the paint, plays off a two, up fake, and gets that defender to kind of leave his feet. Starfish got you, and now we're going to the line for two. And when he gets to the line to make those two free throws, I think that also helps his rhythm for the rest of the night. So again, Quickly's playing at a high level. We hope that it can continue, especially when he comes back home to the crib.
Yeah, that's what you want to hope that you can continue getting from your, like, again, lead point guard, a player that has been good at times. I think the Raptors can see it in flashes and why they brought him in. It was just the consistency of it all. Can he do it for an extended period? Can he do it against more stout defenses, for example? And again, I know the Thunder were shorthanded in some capacity, but you still have really quality players on this team. They had lost 9 games all season entering this one. So I don't think you can really just dismiss the Thunder because they're missing a couple of guys. And for Quickly and this team to do what they did, I think it's going to be a very good like stepping stone for them. And it's one of those things where, like, again, your leaders really have to like lead the way at the end of the day, right? So Immanuel Quickly was consistent throughout this game. Scottie Barnes did not have, again, just like the last game, he was pretty quiet for a lot of this game. Brandon Ingram had an off night. He finished with 13 points on 5 of 18 shooting. So you didn't necessarily get BI with a lot of tough bucket getting or anything late. It's not going to happen every night. That's fine. But for Quickly to do what he did late, for Scottie Barnes to find a way to impact this game late on both ends of the floor, I feel like I've been a bit of a broken record with it because I said it last game, I said it the game before that, but that's exactly what you want from a really quality team. You want to keep saying the same things that are positive, that these guys are stepping up in these clutch situations late, because we haven't necessarily been able to say that in parts of the season.
Yeah, and I think it's a testament to the Raptors development staff, right? You talk about Mama, who had a great quote. I think Kayla Gray mentioned it throughout the game, but him just speaking to practicing with the practice squad, but also the starters. So when you have that fluidity of all guys from the whole roster, I think you really can embody that next man up mentality. And that's what the Raptors are doing. The next guy is stepping up. Like you said, Jacoby Walter having great activity today. And it's not necessarily on the offensive end, but his impact is felt, whether it's in the stats or not. You know that he's in the game because he's making his presence be felt. And you can say the same about a lot of guys. Grady Dick, again, didn't fill the stat sheet, but he was pretty efficient and he was very active on the defensive end. Hope he's okay. We know we saw him come off with a little bit of a limp, but then again, you have other guys stepping up on nights where, the superstars aren't really showing. And it was kind of odd, right? Because Brandon Ingram was kind of out for an extended period of time. And we saw him on the bike for a little bit. And then when he got
like
in
7 minutes, I think.
Right. And I don't, usually in the NBA, their minutes are pretty, consistent. And for him to kind of stay out, I don't know what happened there, but I think that kind of contributed to him not being able to make some of those shots. He didn't really have his legs under him. We saw him have an air ball and then 2 short shots from the midi that he usually hits at a high level. So like you said, credit to Quickley and to other guys like Shed, who made a big time 3 ball at the end of the third quarter, off the drop. Like we said, guys are going under. You have to make and take that shot if you're a point guard, especially if you want to be consistent or be relevant in this league. So again, the Raptors' next man up mentality has been great and outstanding on this road trip. You just hope that it can continue to happen and continue to pick up. And we haven't even talked about RJ Barrett yet. And I know that's not really a next man up mentality, but him returning to form, he had incredible drives to the basket, creating for his teammates, and also just his activity again in the paint, being someone that could create offense or at least ignite it for himself and other people. I think it's definitely a weapon for the Raptors with having RJ just to come back to his true form.
Yeah, we know everything RJ Barrett provides for this team. It's the second game back after missing, I believe, 7 in a row. So seeing his legs get under him more is going to be positive. And another thing positive for the Raptors, Duane, was the second quarter. So I think it's time we start breaking down our turning point of the game.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
Okay, this was a game that there were 17 lead changes, so tons of back and forth. They always say basketball is a game of runs. So for you to have any moments where a team is able to really take momentum for an extended period, And I feel like the Raptors were able to really do that in the second quarter, and it was indicative of what they were able to accomplish for this game. The Raptors entered the second quarter trailing 30-25. They won that quarter 29-20 while holding OKC to 6 of 17 from the field in that quarter, 5% shooting. They also, again, SGA at halftime had 9 points, 3 assists, and 2 turnovers on 2 of 5 shooting. Anytime you can hold SGA to not just 9 points, but just 5 shots and barely getting to the free throw line, again, a testament to Jacoby Walter and what he was able to do. The Raptors were very disciplined on the other end as well, only 2 turnovers, and this is a Thunder team that forces the most points off turnovers in the NBA. So it was kind of like check, check, check. They had a game plan coming in. They were able to execute it, especially in that second quarter. And I thought that's kind of the same style they got back to in the fourth quarter to really propel themselves to this victory. It was just a overall special defensive effort that was just a testament to what this team's strength is, right?
Yeah, definitely a testament to their strength. And you talked about it. For me, it's a do it by committee style of defense. Everybody is bought in, and that's what you want on the defensive end, and it makes a difference. And to me, also, your best offense comes from your defense. So if you're able to get out in transition, which the Raptors did at a high level again today with 20 fast break points, I think that can be an igniter for you kind of being back in control of the game. So again, they kind of found their footing in that. We saw Mamu again, a guy who's a big that is trustworthy coming out of the short roll. He's making great plays, or he can be a receiver on that end and also get to the line and establish that paint dominance. So I think, again, the Raptors did a great job of pushing the ball, capitalizing on turnovers, but also just bearing down and guarding their yard. Next man up. The guys are rotating, they're talking, they're vocal out there, and you can see it. And then when you have a guy like Scottie Barnes, you already spoke about it, but him and his activity when it comes to protecting the rim, back there, on the back line that you're able to pressure a guy like SGA. Jacoby Walter has no fear of SGA when he's picking him up on the other end of the baseline and is willing to guard him from 94 feet because we have a guy like Scottie behind you. So having that trust not only in sharing the rock and passing the pill, but having that trust on the defensive end, I think has been boding well for the Raptors because, they're moving as one when it comes to defense.
Yeah, Jacoby also had a strip in this game on Chet Holmgren one-on-one. That is saying something. Obviously, he's giving up a lot of size there. But like you said, when he's not showing any fear and not showing any hesitation in guarding these guys, that's exactly what you want from Jacoby Walter. It's a simplified role, be pesky as hell on defense, and he was able to accomplish that in this game. And you mentioned as well the fast break points. The Thunder give up the fewest fast break points in the NBA. They give up the fewest paint points in the NBA. So for the Raptors to win both of those and to win them both as handily as they did with 44 points in the paint, that's plus 14, 20 fast break points, that's plus 10. I think a lot of that, like you said, it started in the second quarter. It was being intentional about getting to the spots that they wanted to. And that's exactly what they leaned on the rest of the way. And it got them a really, really good win.
Yeah, I got them a really good win, and it's tough, right? Because in the first half, I was looking at the free throw disparity, and I was like, I don't know, man. Shooting this kind of percentage is tough to get a win in this environment, especially against defending champions, right? But also, another thing that I noticed too was the three-point line, man. The Thunder were lighting it up from the three-point line. Again, credit to SGA for finding his open teammates. We saw guys like Isaiah Joe make a couple shots, but the Raptors figured out a way to kind of barrel down on that. So, again, their defense has to be the catalyst for them going forward. They cannot rely on offense. We know you have guys like B.I. who, again, made some great plays in the second quarter. We saw a couple of tough buckets. And him being at 6'8", 6'9", it's really, really tough for defenders to really opposing guys to contest his shot, because for him, when he's missing, it reminds me of KD. If I'm missing in the mid-range, it's because of me. It's not anything that anybody's doing to me because I can't even see you down there. So he had a couple nice buckets in the paint where he spun and hit a couple middies. But again, the third quarter, I think, set the tone for the rest of the game and how it was going to be. It was chippy. And you saw the Raptors have a great attitude towards closing the quarters. And I think that's something that they need to continue to do going on. Again, when you're not shooting the free throw well, or you're not making a three ball well, what else can you rely on? And you got to steal points here and there. And that was through their transition. That was through their second chance opportunities. And that was from them just staying poised throughout the game.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And I liked how you put it, where they were able to really just like keep themselves in it by just relying on their hustle and their effort. And I know that sounds like a cliche in basketball sometimes, but that's truly what it can come down to in certain situations. This was, again, it wasn't a stellar offensive performance by the Raptors. They shot 43% from the field, 35 from three. Again, those aren't going to be numbers that pop off the page, right? And again, it's a Thunder team that is getting contributions from other guys. We said SG had a bit of a slow start. Lou Dort was 4 of 8 from three, and I think he was 4 of 6 to start. Shout out Montreal native Lou Dort. So they were getting other guys to make big shots for them. So for the Raptors to, I think I tweeted this out too, where like they were really matching OKC's scrap level And for them to do that, I think it's really what helped them sustain that third quarter and not take too much damage. OKC, I believe, at one point went on a 16-7 run in the third quarter. So for them to keep themselves in it, and you mentioned it already, Jamal Shead hitting that shot right at the end of the quarter was huge. A guy like Grady, was running around so much defensively that at one point when he came off, he could barely breathe. Like, he's trying to hold himself together. And that's the kind of effort you want to see from these guys. And that's exactly how they're able to maintain some momentum going into the fourth quarter as well.
Yeah, seeing guys come off gas because of how they play on the defensive end is always a great sight. It's a motivator. That's the thing I love about the Toronto Raptors this season, especially, is that you see guys get up off the bench, whether it's Gary Temple, anybody else, getting up off the bench, cheering for their teammates for big, major defensive plays. Like I mentioned earlier in the third quarter when Grady Dick had that nice contest that forced the shot clock violation or a horrible miss. You saw guys up the bench screaming all together. It gives a sense of family. And then also when Scottie Barnes was able to get that incredible block on Chet Holmgren near the end, that was a clutch stop. You saw the guys get up and scream as well. Even when Scottie was able to make that massive play, when Shed missed those 2 clutch free throws in the fourth quarter, Scottie was able to have a controlled tap to the back and quickly was able to get the ball and get fouled and bury his 2 free throws to warm up the bus to get the party going so they can come back to the crib. But you saw the bench again getting up for those moments. So that's a sign of a team that's connected. That's a sign of a team that cares about one another, that's selfless, and it's reflected not only in the stats but also just in the culture. Again, I love seeing that. When you see guys get up, it reminds me of when Kyle Lowry used to play for the Raptors and he would take charges or lead the NBA in charges, and you'd see how his teammates would love that for him and support him for that. So it's a continued trend, and we love to see it, especially on the defensive end. And you know what? There's going to be nights where guys like Lou Dort is going to beat the scout per se, because he's definitely a streaker shooter, and that's someone that you want to leave open. You rather Lou Dort make those 3-point attempts than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander coming off the dribble, especially when he has his nice step back going left, and it seems like it's automatic every time. So for Lou Dort to do what he did, like you mentioned in that second quarter, you want to live with it. And when you maintain your energy and stick with the scout, especially when it comes to the attention to the detail of it, things will play out in their favor. And that's what we saw when they started missing in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I think that's very well put. All right, coming up on the Raptors Postcast, Duane and I are going to dive into how the Raptors were able to maintain a presence inside, getting up close, especially against a Thunder team that doesn't really allow many pain points, as I mentioned. And we're going to talk about that and give out our player of the game as we continue the Raptors Postcast. All right, this episode is presented to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during NBA Happy Hour brings something new every time, whether that's boosts, bonuses, and surprises. The timing is perfect. It's right before games and right before the weekend starts, and it adds extra energy to Fridays without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check out the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And I hope you took the Raptors to cover the spread. They were 12-point underdogs, which I thought was a little disrespectful. So for them to not only cover that and come out with the win, I think it was a major statement. So it's a little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's on NBA Happy Hour, only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. This episode is also brought to you by Gametime. During basketball season, there's nothing like being in the building. The energy, the crowd, the first big run that gets everyone on their feet. Fans want to be there for those moments, not stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost. And that crowd at the Paycom Center in OKC tonight was rocking, and I'm sure a lot of them were really happy to be there for such an awesome game. And that's where the Gametime app comes in. It gives fans the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets. It's fast, simple, and without any guesswork. Browsing the Gametime app is straightforward and intuitive, and within a few taps, you can see the view from your seat and make buying tickets easy and confident. The prices for fees are upfront, so the total is clear. And with zone deals, you can even help unlock greater seats and better value. So whether it's an NBA game or another live event, everything is there in one place. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, NBA for $20 off. All right, as we continue this episode of the Raptors Postcast, be sure to check out Sean Woodley with Locked On Raptors on Monday mornings to get more in-depth analysis of the Raptors' 103-101 win. All right, Duane, it is time for our Take Notice segment. For those that have not been with us before, that is where we turn to you, our professional, and get some insights on this game that are specific to your own observations. What did you notice, Duane?
Today's take notice for the game is beating the block. The Raptors did an incredible job of establishing themselves down low, especially in the paint. And on a night where some of the stars aren't able to hit from the outside area, you want to establish yourself in that dominance inside. And they had a plus 14 advantage to that being inside. And man, they were moving like Picassos because they were touching that paint so much. And I loved it because that ball finds energy. And when you're getting into the lane, we saw a play where Sheikh got in there, dumped it down to Scottie. He dunked it over top. Those are the kind of plays that get Scottie going, especially on the defensive end. So establishing yourself in the paint is always going to be great. And when you have numbers that are that disparaging and there's that much of a difference, I think that's the reason why they're able to pull out the victory. Of course, we know the Thunder is an incredible team, the defending champs. But in my opinion, they relied a lot on the mid-range. They were shying away from the paint area. And then again, in the fourth quarter, the Raptors' defensive ability from guarding the three-point line was incredible. And I think that's part of the reasons why the Thunder was struggling, because they settled so much because of the Raptors' defense and activity on that end. So again, the Raptors being able to steal points by just getting into the paint is a great thing because it establishes that dominance, but also it gets you to the line, right? So for them getting those free points at the free throw line, because guys like Brandon Ingram, like I said, were struggling in the second half, but then he was able to go to the block, pump fake, and get a foul on the other side, which got him 2 free throws, I think is a good mindset to have going forward. You don't want to rely on three-point shooting. They're not the best three-point shooting team anyways. So for them, transition buckets, which is playing fast with pace, but also getting into that paint, I think is an area where the Raptors should continue to focus on because it's what they do pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, 44 paint points for the Raptors. And I think something that the paint success underscores is the Raptors were able to make a bit of an impact against the Thunder zone defense. We hadn't really mentioned the word zone yet, and that's been a bit of a trigger word lately for the Raptors, right? We've seen them find some success against it. We've seen them not find success against it early in this road trip, and it feels like they've really been figuring it out little by little. And against the Thunder specifically, and you kind of hinted at it, it's just like their activity and moving off ball, they're cutting, finding different ways to get to the middle, whether it was through screens and rescreens, whether it was guys like Grady with back cuts, opening up space for a guy like Scottie to relocate or what have you. I think they were able to really take OKC's punch in that regard because this is a Thunder team that, again, is very good defensively. So you knew their version of zone was going to be a lot more effective than maybe some of these other teams. And for the Raptors to be able to manage it by finding ways inside, finding success closer to the basket, I think was able to nullify what the Thunder wanted to do with that scheme defensively, and they had to play them more straight up. And again, that played to what the Raptors wanted, right?
Yeah, it definitely did. You mentioned it already, but those cuts were so vital. Like you mentioned, Grady Dick doing those backdoor cuts is amazing. Guys like Mamu just playing that dunker area of the zone. So once you get it into that nose spot, which is the nail, then you have Scottie giving him options. You can kick it out for the 3 for a guy like Grady Dick or for a guy like Immanuel Quickley, or you can find his big down low, his partner, his passing partner. But man, their ability to pass the ball at a high level from the big spot or from even the wing spot of Brandon Ingram making those passes, I think is such a luxury to have for the Raptors, especially with their size and their length. They're able to see over top of that zone. And I think that's an advantage for them because, yes, the OKC Thunder was not really committing to the zone. They were kind of junking it up. They're playing man every now and then going back. And I think the Raptors have seen enough of it. Like we talked about, seeing a steady dose of something, you're going to prepare for it better and better each time. They're being able to evolve when it comes to competing against these opposing teams' zones. And I like the fact that they're not just settling for threes and they're figuring it out and they're getting into the paint, whether it's a ball screen on the top guy from the zone or whether it's hitting the top nose and the nail and playing from there. But man, shout out to the Raptors for just being able to, accept the fact that teams are going to zone them up, but not really relinquishing to it, just finding out ways and solutions to be effective against it.
Absolutely. I think that's very well said, Duane. All right, it is time to hand out a bit of hardware for this game. We're going to give our player of the game next.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
All right, this was an interesting one, Duane. I think there's one player, I guess we go by the box score, that really does stand out. But to your point and to what we said, there was a lot of contributions, right, up and down the roster. You can look at what Scottie Barnes did late. He finishes with 10 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists, 3 blocks. So, again, really, really impactful late in this game. I think a guy like Grady Dick at least deserves some mention. 10 points, 4-7 from the field. Tons of activity on both ends of the floor. I believe it's his 6th time in his last 7 games scoring at least 10 points. So we've talked about it with him. Consistency, finding ways to do it again and again. But then again, if you look at the box score, Immanuel Quickley really was that guy leading the charge. 23 points, 11 rebounds, 2 steals, 7 of 14 from the field. He made 6 threes. You mentioned it as well. The threes early, the threes late. I thought defensively, he was also really making plays when they needed it. You mentioned the back-to-back threes. Right after that, he closed out on Kenrich Williams and was able to tip the ball and cause an air ball. And this is in the fourth quarter in a really timely moment of the game. He was able to come up with a play on that side of the floor as well. And that's a floor about Quickley not being a liability there. So he stands out to me, and I think that's where I would go. But we talked about multiple guys here. Where do you lean overall for the player of the game?
Multiple guys, but I gotta go with my dog Quickley, man. Call him the Quickster. He was doing his thing all throughout the game. Even in the first half, he was playing at a high level, established himself in the paint, 2 feet, couple floaters, getting straight to it, couple trade balls, nice little shot on the right slot in the first quarter. I think he was really locked in. He's been locked in all road trip, but a guy like Quickley, I think even having double doubles in the sense of rebounds is impressive to me because he's not the biggest guard out there. So again, when you have that smaller lineup, when you're playing against a lengthier, bigger team in OKC, it's really impactful when you have a 2 guard or a point guard that's able to get more than 10 rebounds. So for me, that was a special performance from him, just being able to not only score the ball when they needed it most, but also to defend at a high level. Like you said, have his hand on that late second contest, I think was really major for the Raptors and their success and how they closed out that game. But man, Quickley back-to-back threes, had that clutch gene on lock. And like I said, getting to the line and making those free throws after Shed just went up there and missed in a high pressure situation is not to be overlooked as well. So again, Quickley just doing it from all angles. And again, him playing this well on the road, we just hope that the consistency keeps up and that he's able to find that rhythm in the 6 as well and just pick his spots. I don't think he's forcing anything. Like I said, he's being very decisive, and it showed here today. Just playing at a high level with great energy and just with a lot of swagger out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned it, 11 rebounds that tied his season high. And I want to go back to, you mentioned it right there at the end. He's being very decisive, and I feel like everyone can see that. It's very intentional. His decisions are faster. And it sounds almost simple because, like, there's probably some people who look at the inconsistency there and they're like, well, why can't he do that all the time? Why can't he just decide to make decisions faster, be quicker, be more intentional? Like, I think a big thing for him lately is he's been much more willing to make passes over and around defenders. And that goes back to your point of being more intentional, being more decisive. From a player's perspective, why is it just not that simple as like, oh, why can't you just do that all the time? Clearly something switched here for him. What do you think it is? And like, where do you think that comes from?
I think it's a lot of game film. He's been watching a lot of film, but why, to answer the question as to why it's not as simple, is because you're playing different defenses every night. So you're facing a different scout. So for a guy like Quickley, he has to figure out a way, like I mentioned in previous episodes, basketball is a game of chess. You got to figure out different ways to be effective. And sometimes the night is not your night, meaning guys like Grady Dick, I think, is doing a great job of figuring it out. Yes, we know he could probably score 20 points. He averaged 20 a couple of years ago, or a couple seasons ago. But right now he's figuring out how to be most effective. And when guys like Quickley find out their role, but then are willing to accept it and embrace it, I think that's when they become most successful. So for him, it's just establishing the fact that I'm being poised and allowing the game to come to me. I don't have to dribble and size up players for 10 seconds of the shot clock and able to get my shot off. And like you said, him being a more willing passer, a more trusting passer, and a more efficient passer, to be honest, with his decision making, is allowing him to get that lane, to get into the basket and be able to either finish with his crafty moves or his floater or get to the line. Like I said, playing with more patience is something I think has been a help for his game, getting on 2 feet and using that pivot. So a guy like Quickley, man, to answer your question, it just comes at reps. Being able to get more reps at this position of being the second guard instead of being the one that's setting up the offense, I think has helped him greatly and tremendously. But also having that pressure taken off of him of having to be the guy that's setting up, okay, I got to get Scottie a shot. Okay, now I got to get BI a shot. And having Shed be more the one to quarterback the situation, I think is the reason why Quickley is able to just focus on scoring and do it at a high level right now.
Absolutely. I think that was very insightful. That's why we go to you. We get the players' insight on these kind of situations, and I'm so glad that we have it. All right, Duane, some final thoughts from you on the Raptors closing out this road trip, 4-1. We called them Road Warriors last time, but they definitely made that statement here. I believe that was their 16th road win. They now lead the Eastern Conference in wins on the road. They're third in the NBA overall in wins on the road, and that was their first win in OKC since February of 2022. Talk about statement. Any final thoughts on this win before we wrap it up?
I think they got to stay hungry. I think they know that. But just beating a team like OKC, again, I mentioned it before, defending champs, it can kind of put a boost in your battery, but they don't want to go home and be complacent. They want to go back home. They got the Knicks coming in. That's no team to laugh at for sure. A great team in the East. They got to be able to prepare and continue this momentum going forward. But that starts with them continuing to share the basketball, continuing to just play defense at a high level, and let that defense be their identity, not their offense. And, man, the next man up mentality has to continue going forward, because one thing about Toronto in the city, or even the country of Canada, because let's be honest, Toronto is the country's team, they support them. They have their back. So that next man up mentality is something that can be felt and unified, not only for the players, but also the fans. So going back to the home court advantage, guys get to sleep in their own bed. We joked about it before. Guys get to get back to their regular routine, see their families, be at the crib. You don't want to get too comfortable. You got to establish yourself at the Eastern Conference and be the dominant in that area. You want to make sure you protect home court by getting those wins as well. So never take your foot off the gas, stay hungry, and realize that, yes, you guys did some great things and they won ugly and they're able to walk away with some victories, but also understand that there's still a better part of the season to go. So they have to continue to strive for greatness.
Absolutely. I think that's very well put. A lot of season left, like you said, and we are going to be covering it all the way to the end. So for now, that does it for us. For myself, Zulfi, Sheikh, and Duane Notice, thank you to everyone who tuned in live and for those listening the morning after. Finally, we didn't have to come up and show up and talk after midnight. We finally got to do it at a reasonable hour. So for everyone joining us, thank you so much. And for those that joined us during that late stretch, we also appreciate you. And if you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to Locked On Raptors on all platforms. Don't forget to comment below if you had any thoughts on this game. And like Duane mentioned, we'll be back on Wednesday live after the Raptors host the New York Knicks, as these are two teams jockeying for position in the Eastern Conference. That 3 seed is really tight and up for grabs, and the Raptors can put themselves ahead of the Knicks with the win. And we will see you then on the Raptors Postcast. Peace.